welcome everyone to this week's AMA with Peter, who I'm very excited about for two reasons. One, Peter has a very impressive background with both kind of a sales leader with more of an operational, data driven way of thinking, and selfishly because Peter is a customer of Pocus. So I always love Pocus. But for those of you who haven't joined us before, this is your time to ask Peter any questions live that might be top of mind. So just write them in the chat as we go. And I'll give a quick intro and then we'll get started. So welcome, Peter. Peter brings over 20 years of experience and go-to-market expertise. Right now, he's VP of Revenue at Vidyard, where he leads the entire Rev team, including sales, biz dev, renewals, and CS. His background includes senior leadership positions at Salesforce, InVision, several others where he specialized in building scalable revenue systems. And I think the word scalable systems are very important for this conversation because Peter has very, I thought, thoughtful and incredible takes on how to do more with less, think about things strategically, build thoughtfully. So I'm pumped for this conversation, Peter. What did I miss in your background?
Overly gracious. You didn't miss anything, but I'm excited to talk to you too. Good to catch up.
Yeah, well, maybe let's start with something that we talked about, Peter, in our last conversation is that the old school way, maybe the Oracle style way of building sales teams of just hire more salespeople, more, is not working. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, and I think Oracle started this, but this could predate back to the IBM, and I definitely know this used to be the old photocopier ways of doing things. And it's if you hire salespeople, they will create pipeline, and when pipeline comes, you will close deals. Makes sense, looks great on paper, and it worked really, really well for a long time. But I think when we moved from the mobile desktop to the cloud era, and we saw such an amazing proliferation of technology, the options and the attention that you need to grab to like build pipeline have just changed. It is no longer a brute force. Like you can brute force your way to a certain level of productivity and success, but it just doesn't work anymore. You need to be really thoughtful. You need to be focused. You need to understand throughput. Um, the term ICP. I think that really came to fruition probably the last 5 years, but I don't remember talking about that 20 years ago. And so I think the world has just changed where it's no longer just hire salespeople and you'll hit a revenue number. It's you need to be uber thoughtful about what does your top of funnel look like? Are your demand gen functions all optimized? Do you understand your throughput? Can you sustainably build pipeline? Can you feed salespeople and then hold them accountable to build X amount of their own? And it's a delicate balance because you always want to hire more, especially when things are going well. And I think we'll talk about this maybe in a bit, but like over hiring is even worse than under hiring these days. So that's kind of like my big bold statement. But I think and actually like even on that, the cost of making a mishire these days, it's never been worse because the velocity and pace at which business is going, you can't miss, right? You want to make sure it's a mutually good fit, get somebody in the seat that's super excited, and then allow them to run and be successful. And if you miss on that, I don't think it's 6 months of lost productivity. I think it's even more than that. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, it's something I've been talking to a lot of operations and revenue leaders about is the overhiring, underhiring problem where it's almost impossible to get hiring right, especially when you're in the earlier days. When you're a large organization like Oracle or Salesforce, there's an equation. But if you're a startup or a high growth company, I'd say any pre-IPO companies, it's almost impossible to get right. And I think there's a lot of debate that just hire more, you can, figure out who the top performers are, remove the low performers, you'll get it right. More people equals more revenue. And then there's another school of thought, which you and me and actually our head of sales fundamentally agrees with, where if you underhire the right amount, you can kind of run hot on your team and kind of get more done. So talk to me a little bit about your perspective of underhiring versus overhiring.
Yeah, and you never want to. It's funny. You want to run a little hot because there's nothing better than everybody on the sales floor overachieving. It's just it's a great thing to behold. Um, but you don't want to be too far underhired where people change jobs, things happen. So it's such a delicate balance to your point. But to me, again, I would go back to it's really understanding the throughput. how much pipeline can you sustainably build on your demand gen functions? How much capacity do your sellers have to build their own pipeline? Because here's the crux point where under hiring can really hurt you to a certain respect. Sellers, as part of the job, you need to build X amount of your own pipeline. The old adage, if you're in SMB, you're building 1x. If you're in enterprise, you're building closer to 2x, and mid-market all somewhere in the middle. That hasn't died. I think that still holds true. It's what we try to do at all the companies I've been at. And you need to leave a certain amount of that. And if you run too hot on the other side of it, then they have no time to build pipeline. But on the other side of it's you're running cold, all they're doing is building pipeline, and it just that's where I see the death spiral happen. So to me, it's always better to be a little bit more conservative. Make sure that everybody is overachieving on their number. Make sure that there is sustainable growth happening throughout the entire funnel, and pragmatically start layering more salespeople, not the other way around. Where hey, we're a little bit shy on numbers, let's hire more salespeople, get them to go build more pipeline. There's certain times where that may work, but I think on aggregate, those days are over.
Mm. So are you in the mindset of AE should always be generating pipeline versus these AI SDRs that are going to generate all the pipeline for them?
That worked out really well. Uh, I Well, it was two. So there's two questions there. One, yes, I think if you were in a revenue facing role, so myself included, I should be building pipeline. Our CEO is building pipeline. Everyone in the company should be building pipeline 100% of the time, right? How much pipeline is obviously a different number, but yes, if you're in a revenue org or a senior leadership role, you should always be building pipeline. Um, do I think AI SDRs are going to do that? Absolutely not. I think there are places where I'll probably talk a lot more about AI, but AI is super helpful, and I think it can extend, expand, and maybe streamline. But full replacements for certain roles, I just don't know if it's going to happen. You saw that with the AI SDR piece. Oh, let's just fire all the SDRs. My companies I'm been with haven't done that, thankfully, but you've seen companies, oh, we'll just let AI do it. And that lasted, I don't know, 18 to 24 months. Funny enough, I just talked to somebody at Gong on this in a different webinar that it didn't work. There are use cases for AI for some of the repeatable, mundane, but like people buy from people. They want to talk. An ASDR is not going to be able to get somebody on the phone and like convince them to take another 30 seconds to listen. Not yet. Who knows what happens in 24, 36 or more months. But right now, like you still need really intelligent, curious, gritty people to and like get people on the phone to make that happen. So again, we're testing out ASDRs, but that's to help take the monotony off of our team's plates, not to replace their jobs.
For sure. And that's our exact philosophy as well, where can AI supercharge sellers, reduce the manual work, simplify tasks versus just replacing them altogether when generating pipeline.
100%.
Yep. Let's talk about pipeline. So, um, pipeline as a vanity metric. So talk to me more about that. I know that was a controversial statement that requires some follow-up commentary.
Yeah, I think you caught me at the end of a statement, but I'm going on to another topic. But it can be a vanity metric if you look at it in a box. Don't get me wrong. If you pipeline cure, I think Tony Rodoni or somebody told me this a long time ago. Pipeline cures all your problems, and in essence, it can. If you have more than enough pipeline, you're always going to be in good shape. But if all you're looking at is pipeline closed on business and win rate, you're in trouble. You really have to get specific on conversion from website views to MQL to SQL, SAL, whatever metrics and terminology you're using, like that you have to be a data jockey in my role as much as what my counterparts in marketing are doing to truly understand the throughput, because quality of pipeline now is equally as important as like overall pipeline. And what I mean by that is, um, I can pay somebody to build pipeline and they're going to build me pipeline. But if the quality of that pipeline is really, really bad, then we're not going to get to the outcomes we want. And so you constantly need to look at all the metrics that are correlated with each demand gen channel, with each source, with each product to fine tune this to make sure that that aggregate pipeline number is working out. And I know a lot of teams are getting great at this, but it's just something that I see it overthrown. Oh, just go build more pipeline. Yeah, what type of pipeline? Like, so when I say it's a vanity metric, it's the second most important metric, but there's always a but behind that. You have to really understand the throughput. And I'm sure the audience knows that, but I've seen a lot of folks sway away from that, and you look at the grandiose numbers and not look at the specifics.
For sure. It's when we often partner with our customers, they'll come to Focus, and the first step is we need more pipeline. And then, we dig in a little more and we're saying, why do you need more pipeline? And then you realize, okay, it's actually maybe stage 2 pipeline, not stage 0. And you need high quality pipeline. And we need to think about your conversion rates, because if you have so much pipeline, but none of it's high quality, then it doesn't matter. You're just spinning cycles with sellers. And so, making sure that you have the right pipeline and the right mechanisms in place to convert that pipeline is equally as important. I agree.
Exactly.
Um, Something that you mentioned to me is that to think about pipeline per head metric versus just hiring more. And we believe that at Focus as well. When people say, is AI going to replace salespeople? My perspective is, in the near term, I think AI is going to let sellers do more so they can have bigger books of business. They can generate more pipeline because they're becoming more productive. And so the best sellers will just become even better. I think that's where you were going with that statement, but I'm curious how you think about measuring pipeline per head.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to a few of the points we just talked about, right? It's like, how much sustainable pipeline can you build by which demand and channels? You start there. And then you look at, okay, um, how many sellers do I have? How much pipeline am I bringing into all those channels of a certain quality? And then, can we continue to move that number up without hurting win rates, right? Pretty logical stuff when you think about it, but in a box, revenue leaders aren't always getting that specific. And then, okay, can I layer on more to them through themselves or through a technology to add more? And then how much throughput can they actually manage, right? Because and it depends on the segment. In enterprise, like, that number is almost infinite. If you are an enterprise seller and you have $3 million deal, well, or 3 multi-million-dollar deals, you might be able to run the media team to help you. But when you're getting down market, there's just only so many cycles you can run. And so at that point, it's okay, how many deals, what's the total amount of pipeline, and getting fidelity on what the entire throughput looks like to make sure that you've got the right amount. Coupled with, there's nothing worse than go back to overhiring, where you're not developing a certain amount of pipeline per head, where, oh, we'll just get them to build their own. And again, sometimes you can do that, but only to a certain amount. I have found it almost impossible to get SMB sellers every month of every year to average more than about 1 to 1.2x of their own pipeline, right? Now, there's certain markets where this could happen, but in general, it's not going to happen. There's enough deals, there's enough learning that early on in their careers, for the most part, you're just not going to get more of that. Enterprise, completely different story, but in the SMB mid-market motion, there's a ceiling to that number. And so hiring more salespeople in organizations that serve the SMB and the lower end of the mid-market, it's very dangerous, right? On the enterprise, it's a different problem, right? If if you don't have a nails ICP, completely understand where you're focusing, and the enterprise throughput in terms of like sales or solutions engineers, product to support it. You can build all the pipeline you want, but you can't convert it, right? And so those are when you want to get very specific on the quality and the level and the amount of pipeline you are building, depending on the market you're serving, the segment you go after, ICP, product market fit, all that great stuff.
Mhm. I love how you think about these things, and you're very practical and first principle, which I really appreciate. Um, pulling on that. So the last several years in tech have been weird. It's been kind of, everyone doing riffs, and then AI came and we're hiring a bunch again, and then we're riffs, and then we're hiring a bunch again, and there's a lot of instability and uncertainty. So how do you think about decision making in this world of being able to make the decisions around everything we just talked about and more? And I know you lean more conservative growth on that spectrum, but how do you decide all of that?
Yeah. Well, that definitely, and that's why I lead revenue teams and why I'm not a CEO. I don't have the chutzpah to go go big without understanding the data. Um, but one, it comes down to that, truly understanding your data and all the things we've already talked about, and then making calculated bets, testing them, and then rolling them out, right? Like, let's go all in after we've proven things out. I've seen this a ton when it comes to AI bets. I haven't really fallen into the trap yet, fingers crossed, but I have seen organizations go all in. Like, there's the well-stated outcomes of Klarna. Hey, we're going to they slash what, 70% of the workforce because AI could do everything. They cut your entire support staff. 18 months later, they hired X amount of them back. And you've seen that oscillation of, oh, we keep all in with AI. AI can do a lot of things great. It's been the best productivity tool in my lifetime, right? But it can't do everything yet, and you're seeing these investments happen. Like, you see a lot of AI companies going from 0 to 30,000,000, 50, 100,000,000 in a year. I've said, "Okay, let's see what a couple, renewal cycles look like." There's gonna be some amazing organizations coming out here that continue to fly, right? The Lovables, the Replets. They have found product market fit and are screaming ahead. There's other organizations where it's not there, and so we're jumping past early adoption into the trough of disillusionment, which is an interesting time to be running revenue organizations and leading companies because customers now, like, they may have been burned on their first foray. And so what we've tried to do is, like, one, double down with great partners like Pocus to see, okay, what are you doing with AI? Start there. Skinny up your tech stack, go all in with a few vendors that really have a clear strategy, are hitting their dev roadmap, right? Like, that's a big thing. Say do. And then we're seeing wins. And then, like, optimize that tech stack and then take concerted bets along the way of ways to supplant it and supplement it with their own thing. We have a great internal team that built like an internal search slash agent that hovers across all of our data. Shout out to Virgil if you're listening. Um, that has now given us just this massive acceleration on learning, enablement, finding, we're a 10-year-old company, so we've got all this data sitting around Pockets, Confluence, Google Drive, people's emails, blah, blah, blah. We connected it and now bubbled it out through this agent that lives in Slack and, like, small bet, but having huge outcomes already, right? We're trying to do a few different things in other parts of the business where, like, test things, make sure they work, and then roll them out and see where you can get more acceleration. But where I worry about is, like, making all big bets on these unproven technologies and pivoting off of human workforces, too soon, right?
Yep.
And it's the pivoting off piece, like, if you do it right, you are allowing folks to move off the monotony and do higher value work at scale, and that's where AI should take over. There will be some transition, like, some jobs will go away. That's going to happen. It happens in every technological, evolution, revolution, whatever we're calling it right now, but I think in general, I'm more of an AI optimist where more will be available. You just have to pivot, right? I've been doing this 20 years and I'm learning something new every day. I am trying to scour up as much information as I can, not to become irrelevant, and it's tough. But there are so many amazing opportunities to work with new technologies, new platforms, but you got to make sure you test it. You wouldn't go all in before on a new piece of software. You shouldn't do the same thing with AI. Make sure it works and then go and then push. Don't jump with 2 feet and then figure out, "Uh-oh, we made a mistake."
100%. I think if you're too much of AI optimist or pessimist is actually bad. Like, you have to be somewhere in the middle where you have to be an AI optimist at ways in tech to keep your job and keep getting better and to do things well. But you also need to, you know, have a realistic view of what can AI do today and what can it not, and where are we investing because we know it will get better in the future. I think, you have to kind of balance that for sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%.
Sean asked a question. He said, in this new era, have you identified efficient methods for AEs to build their own pipeline, given that cutting through the noise is more challenging than ever? And in order to run lean and hot, they have limited time to build pipe in comparison to working active pipe.
Mm, I'm wondering if Sean works for Vidyard. He doesn't because I don't recognize the name, but funny enough, there are some great technologies like Vidyard that allow you to do that. Can I do a shameless plug, Alexa? Like 2 seconds? Bucks. So, we released a tool called Video Agent that allows you to take your avatar, make a personalized video, but put a real person behind it, and do that at scale, working with best in class solutions like HubSpot, Gong, Salesloft is just part of the outreach. And so this is when I talked about doubling down with technologies that already exist, like Focus, like we're going big with Gong on a whole bunch of stuff. Companies that are really leading from the front, see what they've done, and then figure out, okay, what is my current workflow? And where am I seeing a time suck? So if you're a revenue leader and you haven't sat down with an SDR or a seller or someone in RevOps to think, okay, how are you doing your day to day? And just look at the work that they're doing and seeing, okay, why are you doing that way?
Mhm.
Oh, well, that's the way we've done it. Okay. How long does that take? And then just getting super reductive on the tasks that it look like high value, and then figure out, can you automate that with either the tool stack we already have, like some of the great work Focus is doing, or some of the work that we need to build an agent or use a workflow internally. And that's where it is. It's just you almost want to look at it from a Six Sigma standpoint to just understand the very basics, go down to minimum viable product, and then figure out, can you automate it away? It's a great question, Sean, and it's like it really depends on the company, but just look at the tasks that your team would like to do more, but they don't have enough time, or the things that they're doing really, really well that take forever. It's kind of the same thing from different actions. But to me, like AI is one of two things. It allows you to either do more or do better. Right. And so is it something you want to do more of, or is it something that you can do better, better research, better outcomes? More is I just need to do this one thing. I need to, but it takes me 15 minutes. Can I do it in 30 seconds with AI? So again, being super reductive is talking to the team, do more or do better. And sometimes you can do both using AI.
Very well said. Of where, if we're pulling this all together, of where AI can actually help, it's actually mapping out your workflow, figuring out where you can do more, where you can do better. But then something else that you mentioned was being thoughtful about how you evaluate AI. And one of the things you said before when thinking about how to evaluate AI and the few vendors that you want to go deep in, you mentioned one of them was, are they actually shipping quickly on their roadmap? I'd be curious for you, how else are you thinking about what is AI that actually moves the needle versus what's just an expensive experiment? And maybe tactically, like what is the ROI you want to see? Or how do you know if something is good or bad because AI is so new? I think a lot of people are struggling with that.
Yeah. I remember right at the tail end of the pandemic, Sequoia put out this amazing report, and it summarized something that I think a lot of people knew inherently, but maybe not specifically. There's one of three reasons why people buy anything, right? And it's ever more important in the AI era. Helps you make money, helps you lower cost, or it reduces risk. That's it, right? And it's funny, like I'm a big fan of Sandler, and you get reductive on the pain gain. Those are the three reasons people are generally going to make. Usually, it's more the absence of pain. People don't want to get hurt, but that's the reducing risk part. It usually leads to saving money or um, gaining revenue. But if you go down to that, like that basis, that's where you need to look at where to invest. And again, just if you go back to like where your people are spending time, here's an exercise we did. Now, this wasn't even an AI thing. This was more just like uh, working through an organization. Internal meetings, for instance, a bane of the existence for a lot of organizations. Okay. Um, First thing I typically do when I jump into a new company is like, okay, what's on everybody's calendars? Okay. What meetings do you love and what meetings do you not love so much? And then we just go through them like, okay, cut that, cut that, cut that, cut that. We have this great tool called Fellow that allows us to pull meetings and aggregate them together. But it's like break it down to rebuild it because everybody wants to meet. There's a ton of great things to get over, but what could be a video that you send internally to update somebody? What could be a Slack message versus a sync? And again, this isn't necessarily AI related, but it goes back to productivity, which gives you more time to talk to customers. Just like the things that got built up over time, the complexities, like get rid of them right now more than ever. Like people got a lot going on. They're trying to learn AI as part of their job. If you give somebody 4, 5, 6 hours back and say, okay, be really purposeful, go learn AI, take this enablement course, go talk to these 30 customers, you're going to start seeing like cascading positive benefits. And to me, I try to simplify everything. Just what is the minimum thing you need to do to be successful at your job? Enable them to do that, give them a little bit more, and then everything else is noise, right? Which for salespeople or CSMs, it's talking to customers, learning what the product, building pipeline, or doing renewals. That's kind of it. And yes, there's a lot more that goes into it, but at the end of the day, like it's super reductive, almost oversimplified.
I've heard great advice. I think it was from another founder. I can't remember where he said every quarter he just wipes all of his reoccurring meetings and starts over. Because sometimes recurring meetings just happen out of it's been happening, so why don't we stop it versus actually being productive. And they build up over time. And so it feels harder to walk away from them, even though you don't actually need them.
Yeah, I think I heard Toby did this about a year ago too at Shopify, where he built a tool that showed the cost of every meeting into the GCal. So when you went on, it's like this meeting costs $15,000. It's like, okay, is this a $15,000 meeting? Maybe, maybe not. Um, a little more overt than I want to be. But I like it.
It's such a balance because that's also one where it's tough on both ways. Like we've done the extreme of no meetings, no one-on-one, and lose some of the natural kind of information sharing and gathering if you're a remote culture. But honestly, I think it's worse if you're just spending all your day in meetings and you're not getting anything done.
Oh, for sure. And listen, meetings are important, but make sure they're purposeful, right? And the other thing, and this is I see this happen more in remote forward or remote only companies, is that you're talking about the same information in different forums over and over and over again with roughly the same people, or you're updating a spreadsheet and then you're talking about the spreadsheet and then you're doing a report on the spreadsheet. It's like, okay, what's the purpose of whatever we're doing? Let's find the easiest path to get the data we need as executives or as leaders, and then let our people just go do the work. Hold them accountable to a few things that are super, super important, get alignment on that, and then leave them alone.
Yep. I'd be curious your perspective of, especially with more junior employees, the value of meetings just to connect with people and let them talk and complain. And I struggle with this a little in startups where it's such a fast pace that there's not a lot of time for that. But I also recognize that there's an importance there.
It's tough, right? And this is why I'm torn. I think there's some amazing remote only companies and cultures, Vidyard being one of them. But you lose that connectivity. That like I grew up in an office. 8 a.m. every morning, talking to people. You have a bad cold call, you go have a coffee with someone. So you have to create space and allow folks to get that off their chest. Because if not, then you do. And so I think the more remote you are, I think the more lenient you need to be. Obviously, balancing it. But if you're a fully in a office culture and people have a third of their day blocked off for one-to-one syncs with their peers, I probably ask like, hey, do we really need all of these?
Mhm.
So again, it really depends. But people need like sales is hard. I learned a long time ago. There's only two things you can fail at and be successes in: Major League Baseball hitter and sales professional. So it's true if you think about it. If you win 3 out of every 10 deals, you're like an all-star. Same thing in Major League Baseball. 3 out of 3 balls, 10 into play, you're an all-star. That's hard. There's no other job out there where you fail, but you're a winner. And so I get it. But you got to balance it.
For sure. And I do see the benefit of when having one-on-ones with folks. Just chatting on the phone, you can often uncover things that are interesting and unblocking and removing friction that wouldn't have happened in a set time. So I definitely see the value of both. I think for us, the things that have helped is one, having most conversations in public Slack channels so that people can see what's going on versus in your DMs. And two, I'm sure you do this as well, but for the reoccurring one-on-ones, we make sure that everyone submits notes ahead of time to their manager so that do you do that as well or something like that?
We try to. We try to. But like again, we have a great tool. Like just put an agenda. I actually said to media video to the team today, like, hey, we should always be sending agenda items. This is more customer facing than anything else. But yeah, why are we getting on this call? Resetting expectations every single time.
Well, wait until new feature in Focus is coming for that reason, though.
Good. We're usually catch up on what's happening.
Let's catch up separately, Peter. But I
Yeah.
thought this already is over because I feel like I could talk to you for hours. So thank you, Peter, so much. This was awesome.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Ciao.